And for more on this, we are joined here in our Beijing studio by Mr. Yang Xusheng, who is the Deputy Director of Disaster Relief at the Red Cross Society of China. Also, we are joined in the Beijing studio by Mr. Lawrence Brahm, who is the founder of the Himalaya Consensus Institute, which is aimed at protecting the region's ethnic diversity. Many of his colleagues now are in operation right now in Nepal. Meanwhile, in Kathmandu, Nepal, we are joined by Ms. Rose Foley, who is the spokesperson for the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, or UNICEF. Welcome to the three of you. First of all, may I address this question to you, Ms. Foley? How are the children doing over there? We understand a huge part of the population in Nepal actually work overseas, leaving behind the children and the elderly. So what exactly are the situations facing the children over there?
We are looking at a vast humanitarian crisis for children here in Nepal. UNICEF has identified that 1.7 million children are in urgent need of humanitarian aid in the worst affected areas of the earthquake. And we're looking at basic needs. We're looking at water, shelter, sanitation, but we're also extremely concerned with children's emotional and physical well-being because they've been through such a traumatic experience.
Mr. Ram, your colleagues, many are at the moment operating inside Nepal. Which stage of relief and rescue operation did they brief you that the current situation is?
Well, right now people have gone back to their homes in Kathmandu and the really desperate areas, the countryside. And of course, this is where the bottlenecks are. The bottlenecks are getting supplies, people into the countryside, the road systems, and of course there's also aid bottlenecks coming into the country. Those aid bottlenecks are two-sided. On one hand, it's being centralized by the government. They want everything into one government relief pool. On the other hand, a lot of the NGOs who are in the field need to get that aid. So aid cannot reach them because it's being centralized first, or it's not being allowed to be received because of the centralization process. So this is really the bottleneck that we're facing right now.
And there is a reason for, at this moment, what you call centralization process, which is trying to avoid any kind of corruption and trying to, in a way, build a system there, but at the same time, it also has some side effects.
There's two forces that are really the relief forces right now on the ground. One is the Nepalese military, which all my colleagues have said have been really great and responsive, and they're very experienced because it's a combination of the traditional military and the former insurgency they've joined, so they're very experienced. On the other hand, it's the NGOs themselves that are local NGOs. They know the situation on the ground, they can get to the villages, they have the relations, they have the ethnic contacts, and they're able to get there and be first-hand action. So these are really the two sources that are really the first movers in doing, I think, the most right now.
Mr. Yang, here in Beijing, I know many of your colleagues are also on the ground in Nepal, together with some of China's relief and rescue teams there. What have they told you in terms of how the locals are working with the international rescuers and relief teams like yours in order to work out a plan?
Well, as you may know, that the Chinese Red Cross, we have dispatched 20 people altogether. So, and they went to Nepal in two groups. So the first group, there were 4 people. They went there first in order to get in touch with the Nepalese Red Cross, and then at the same time to discuss and with the IFRC, the International Federation of Red Cross, who is the coordinate body within Nepal, to address, to carry out the Red Cross relief operations there. And the Chinese Red Cross, we have sent what we call a medical team. So they are capable of performing different services. One is search and rescue. The other is medical services, because after the disaster, there are many people who have been injured and also who have been buried in the debris.
So there are actually different kinds of different layers of operations going on there in collaboration with the International Red Cross and Red Society operation over there on the ground. But all of you have touched on one thing, that is the coordination. So let me come back to you, Ms. Foley. The United Nations recently has already appealed for more than $400 million US dollars in order to work on the rescue and relief operations and also the future of the country. But being a member of the UN, in fact of UNICEF, what do you make of the local coordination efficiency at the moment? From the UNICEF's perspective, you and your colleagues have been operating internationally in many crises. What is the best way, the most efficient way of incorporating the local government, the armies, the NGOs coming from local, while at the same time supporting the international commerce?
Well, obviously, we're in a time of humanitarian crisis right now, and there are some logistical problems, there are infrastructure problems, but UNICEF is doing everything it possibly can to coordinate with the government, with agencies, with other partners to get aid to the children and the families who really need it the most. And we are doing everything possible. We are getting in aid over the borders from other countries. We are helicopter dropping. We are making sure that our field stations are distributing aid to their local communities to make sure that children get the aid they really need. So we really are, there are so many efforts here on the ground to actually get things coordinated and get the aid to those people who really need it.
There are so many ways. That's an interesting way you just described. Earlier you heard Mr. Brahm in Beijing studio talk about the most efficient way, according to him, the army, local army, and also the local NGO. What exactly is the relations between, for example, your UN organizations in relations with the local NGO? Is the latter being supportive of you? What is the role that you are serving for them, for their services?
Yes, well, in a disaster response like this, there are often clusters that are formed for various programmatic response, so such as responding to water, sanitation and hygiene, or focusing on child protection. So at that, at an overview level, UN agencies, the government, NGOs are working together in a systematic way to get aid to those people who need it the most. So there is coordination there, and everyone really is doing the best they possibly can because children are suffering right now and they need the aid right now.
Systematic is the word used by Ms. Foley, but systematic is the word that actually hardest to be translated onto the ground when you have chaos and crisis like this. You know this better than I do. Mr. Yang, you participate in so many relief and rescue operations concerning China's many earthquakes in recent years. So what exactly do you consider is the most crucial thing, the strength to get everybody onto the same team?
Well, you know, systematic is a kind of ideal situation that we would like to see when you have a situation like this. But this is far from perfect, you know, because it really depends on how good or better that you have done in terms of disaster relief preparations. Because all your relief efforts, all the services, all the structures that you can fix or that you can build for future disasters it should really reflect the real situation.
Right. But you know, in Nepal, it is an underdeveloped country, and of course, infrastructure is one of the shortest point of that country. And at this moment, obviously, the governing would not be able to cater to the current crisis. So all of these are realities. What do you think is the most important thing that can string everybody together?
Well, you know, in such a situation, I think the most important thing there should be a lead agency. You know, who should be in the driving seat?
Earlier,
well,
it was the Netherlands that was in the driving seat because the UN's operations are varied. And since 2 days ago, the United Nations have already made clear that it's appealing for both financial support and trying to lead the operation. But exactly how much would that take, that effort to switch, first of all, and what could be the role of the UN? You probably know this better than I do.
Well, you know, it really depends, you know, what kind of mechanism that was in place before the disaster, you know. Because without the existing structure in place, it will be impossible to talk about a systematic approach to address this kind of humanitarian disasters.
So you're saying at this moment we have to let it be and to do as much as we can on an individual and organizations basis to work with one another. Is that what you're saying?
When I heard you say the Netherlands, they have been the lead agency in Nepal, during this relief operation. That sounds a little bit rare for me.
Okay.
Because it should be either the UN, if the Nepalese government is not capable or strong enough, because they don't have at this moment, I think they are very much under-resourced.
Ms. Foley, obviously our conversation in the studio already reflected the realities you have on the ground. That is, who is taking the lead, who is making the command, and others will really follow. And is the one making the command will also have a huge impact on the Nepalese government to let all the factors work together. Your feeling?
Well, here on the ground in Nepal, all agencies, UN agencies, the government, NGOs are working together in a coordinated way, working on programmatic response in various different areas to make sure it's as coordinated as possible. So various different agencies might take the lead in a certain humanitarian area, but that is planned out and is working together with the government to deliver that.
Ms. Brown.
Yes.
Yeah. Your thoughts on this? At this moment, already 7th day that we are reaching. Of course, I hate to say this, but it's very slim chance that anyone can be saved still at this moment from the rebels. So the thing is how you can serve the one that is living better.
Well, first of all, let me just speak very practically. Medical care is needed. What has been reflected to me from both our offices as well as the government there is the need to put back the road system. For instance, there's an agreement with China for mobile medical clinics. These cannot be airlifted into the rural areas. They have to go by road. The road system, because of shocks on both the Tibet Autonomous Region side and the Nepal side, that's one road system. If that road system can be repaired, it will allow medical clinics to come in and to address needs in the rural areas. The other was just a few days ago, we were speaking on this show and I mentioned the urgent need for helicopters, which China can provide because A, it has the helicopters that can fly at high altitudes, which is very difficult. There's certain machinery that's needed for that, and a certain kind of pilot experience is needed. And so far, 3 helicopters have been delivered. The president of Nepal has come right out and he's thanked China for that. They also need more helicopters. They could use another 9 because at this stage, so many areas people are trapped in rural areas, and the last opportunities to save those survivors can be achieved with helicopters, and this is where China can really come to the rescue.
All right, Mr. Yang, here's the thing. 7th day we are already in, but we are still asking for the very basic things: food, water, some very basic medical care for those locals. Given what Nepal is like before the crisis, and now probably even more, still underdeveloped economy, what is the best way, the most efficient way of doing it?
Well, the most, in my opinion, from my personal experience in the past 2 or 3 decades, I think the ideal situation would be that we should try to have a better coordinated approach.
Yeah.
By better coordination, I mean that we should make better use of the available resources, because we should divide the available resources into different kinds. One is that, especially in the first 3 days or 1 week, that the main top priority should be focused on search and rescue. Try to pull out those that are up from the debris. At the same time, another effort should also be organized that to mobilize as much resources as possible to help those who have survived disaster, because that's very important. Because from the information that